Welcome to another episode of the Launch School podcast. Today we have JD Fortune and Daniel Carter from The Spot. They're co-moderators or co-admin of The Spot. How's it going, guys?
It's going great. Yeah.
Yeah, going good. No complaints.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Today we're going to talk about The Spot a little bit, what that's all about. We have a lot of new students always coming into Launch School, and no matter how well we think people know The Spot from previous years, there's always new people, and I just want to give people a little bit of history, a little bit of insight into behind the scenes on The Spot. And as moderators, I thought it'd be great to have you come on. And before we get into that, maybe we just talk about a little bit about how you two arrived here at Launch School. You're both in core curriculum at the moment, and how did you end up sort of leading this little thing we got going on?
Yeah, sure. So do you want to talk about like what brought us to Launch School, or just from Launch School getting into The Spot?
Yeah, just maybe a little bit about your personal background, set the context for who you are and how you got in Launch School, and then how you got into The Spot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll go first. So I originally went to school for animation, and got a minor in character technical direction. So I was kind of working on computers, doing some 3D design before that. When I got out of college, I kind of transitioned between jobs for a while. I'd done a little bit of animation, but it just didn't ever really click as something that I saw myself doing long term. Eventually fell into working at an engineering company, creating models that we would test in our wind tunnels. Something that I guess originally that attracted me to eventually coming to Launch School was looking for a career that was a little bit more mentally stimulating. So kind of previous jobs that I'd had in the past were a lot more kind of labor intensive and putting out fires. But when I was maybe transitioning to Launch School, I was kind of looking for something that could really engage my focus, attention, and something that I could kind of feel good about the problem solving process. On top of that, something like that would have maybe a requirement for skill, so that kind of the better I got, the more that I engaged, and the more that I developed my skills, the further that I could progress. So I started looking around, originally looking at boot camps, because I feel like that's kind of the first, whenever you're transitioning for a job, look at those. And I was looking through, did a lot of research, watched a lot of videos.
When was this in terms of year?
This was 2021, at the very end of 2021.
Okay. Pretty recent. So we're in 2023 now, so it's only been a couple years.
Yeah. Okay. And so yeah, I was kind of watching a lot of YouTube videos. I was listening to people's different what people took away from the boot camps, and kind of how they felt about the overall progression of that. And what I was getting was that, it was a very quick, 3-month, just throwing so much information at you that you could kind of barely take it, or barely grasp it all, and then coming out of there feeling lost. And I was like, well, that's kind of how I felt my whole life, and that's not exactly something that I'm looking to get into again. So I was really starting to look for something that I could feel competent in the education that I was getting, and being able to take those skills and rely on them, or being able to lean on them as I was kind of moving through this career change. And I was really lucky. I ended up falling on a Reddit post, I think it was, where someone was like, "Have you heard about Launch School?" And they just they really talked it up. But that was the first kind of instance that I'd really heard about it. I guess because we try not to promote it as a boot camp, it tends to not be kind of at the forefront, or at least it wasn't at the point that I was looking at it.
It's hard to describe, right? It's just kind of serious, kind of different. I mean, there's not really a pure category for something like a Launch School. So
yeah.
I did want to mention, or just comment on what you said about having a career where you did not really have mastery. You're kind of always rushing at what we call just-in-time learning. So you're always doing just-in-time learning, which is kind of that feeling like you're always behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Sure.
And what I notice is usually students who find us who really gravitate towards this mastery-based learning idea is they've already experienced that somewhere else, as a musician, as another profession. But it sounds like you you were lacking it. It's not like you were coming from that. You were lacking that, and you didn't want to do it again.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if that says more about me or if it says it about like kind of the previous education that I had. But I never really felt like kind of confident in the education I was getting. I felt kind of pretty lost even coming out of college. Like with my degree, I did pretty well through school, but it was just, we were pushed through courses. They're based on a time frame. You're in this course for 2 months and then you're out. And so I never like kind of got that feeling like, oh, I feel like somewhat competent in this. It was always like I still need to learn more, which I know is going to be a part of this whole um process of becoming a software developer as well. Like you're always going to have to be learning. So it could be, a little column A, column B of just the education system, as well as maybe a mental shift that I had to make that I just wasn't at by that point. But I think also something that attracted me to launch school was that you kind of set people up to kind of get into that mindset, where it's like you talk about the idea of mastery-based learning, you talk about the idea of just-in-time learning and how you're going to have to make these shifts, and kind of a lot of things to expect about like getting into the career of software development. One thing that I've like never prided myself on, I'm pretty introverted. But one of the early articles that you read is that you're like software development is a very social like program or something along those lines, where you have to like get good at talking to people. And that was terrifying for me at first. It was one of those things where I just like had to sit back and I was like, can I actually like do that, or like do I just need to like figure it out? But I think like, yeah, ultimately coming to the school and like going in with that mindset of I'll just have to figure this out as I go, but I can't really hold myself back for not knowing it at the moment, is something that's maybe inherently just a part of the curriculum, even if it's not intended. That's how I personally took it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. So let me switch over to Daniel, give a quick intro, because I feel like we can keep going here for like the whole hour. But yeah, Daniel, what is your background and how did you arrive here and ended up talking to us today?
Yeah, so my background, I originally went to school and studied biochemistry, molecular biology. I graduated with a master's in 2013. I was in the industry doing preclinical pharma and in pharma for about 3 years. I really liked like the subject matter itself, but I don't really like a lot of the limitations of like the jobs where I need to live in Boston or San Diego, or else you're kind of stuck doing kind of mediocre technician jobs in any other major city, even for the most part. So I pretty much, let's see, that was about 2015. I jumped over into cannabis actually, and I've been in the cannabis industry since 2015. So it's been about 8 years now. It's a lot of fun, a lot of really dynamic problem solving, which is really interesting. Kind of like always keeping you on your toes, new things that haven't really been either completely solved or optimized. So it's like a lot of problem solving and optimizing, which was fun for a long time. And then I think actually one of the catalysts for me was similar to a lot of people at the time, was going through kind of the whole social paradigm surrounding COVID and just like reevaluating priorities in life. Like what's important? What do I want to do? Is this like a long-term goal of mine, or like is this something that I should keep putting time into? Because suddenly, like looking back, I'm like, I realized how quickly 8 years just disappeared, and not in a bad way, but just like, oh wow, yeah, like you really kind of get in the rhythm of things, and life keeps going. So I think I spent probably a good 6 months just kind of sitting with that question and then doing research. And my kind of close second choice when I was in school was always computer science. But it just kind of like got edged out for biochemistry at the when it came down to it. And so I started digging back into it a little bit, trying to see what like a transition would look like, both like traditional, like if I wanted to go back to higher education or not. It didn't really seem like I wanted to. Like I already have a degree on paper, and getting another one almost doesn't really seem like the juice is worth the squeeze in like a lot of ways. And then kind of similarly, like just started surveying all of like the boot camps or like non-degree programs that are out there. And somehow I think it was probably also through Reddit. I think that that's the clever marketing of launch school is getting into Reddit. I bumped into it and it just kind of spoke to me from the beginning. Like just mastery based learning in general has served me well in like a lot of ways. Having the time to actually be able to learn fundamentals as opposed to just getting stuff like thrown at your brain and seeing what sticks 6 months down the line. I've had a lot of value in current jobs and stuff having some fundamentals of like various subjects, and so I was like, this actually makes sense. They actually care what we learn, and it's set up that way so that we can actually learn the important things and take as much time as it takes for your life or your brain or kind of the combination of both. And I think that was around similarly like 2021 or so by the time I went through the sitting with the question period, surveying the landscape, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I think COVID
kind of
caused a lot of
been
people to kind of rethink, their careers, their current situation. And I think we also allow like a easy way into it, with our core curriculum, with our prep courses, which I think are always underrated. And
they are.
it allows us, people to just check it out, part-time, right? Without making a huge sacrifice initially. And just for the record, by the way, we don't advertise on Reddit. These are all just like random people talking about launch school. I'm on Reddit a lot, just kind of making random comments here and there. So maybe you caught one of my comments, but we don't we tried it one time and it was so successful but so weird, in that we just got all kinds of weird inquiries. So and for us it's like we need people who are super studious and at least want to be studious at minimum, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's one of those things where like marketing works, but at what cost? Right? We'll save that for a different podcast episode. But so I wanted to talk about, so both of you have really interesting backgrounds, and I feel like we need to like maybe schedule a different episode for each of you, and especially the cannabis industry. That's always kind of interesting. But we're here to talk about the spot. So first question for you, Daniel, is, you're both moderators or admin of the spot. Again, for the newer students or the newer people listening, what is the spot, and what's the goal? And also maybe you can talk about how you got into it first as a participant and now as an admin.
Yeah, so the spot is like a community in launch school that's run by students for students to help everyone kind of come together, be able to like learn and develop community and increase their likelihood of success is kind of what I would like the bucket I would put it in. SPOT stands for study, practice, overlearn, and teach. And that's kind of like the motto or like what it's kind of all about as a community. And I remember when I was first in core, actually I didn't find the spot very quickly. I think it was actually a couple months of me kind of poking around the Slack and not really knowing like one, how to use Slack very effectively, because I was still trying to find channels and like find what channels actually had activity in them. And it wasn't until I saw the spot channel like cross-referenced by someone else after like a couple months where I was like, oh, what is this? And then like I found it and it was like weird at first because I didn't find like a good introduction and like I didn't know if I could like post in there or not. And so there was like a couple weeks where I was like just kind of like creeping in the background and like trying to see what was going on with this channel that had like Slack bot posting, but kind of like mid-level activity besides that. And eventually I started seeing the study sessions and I got a lot of value out of them. There's like a inherent value for me in one, having to articulate concepts, and then two, doing that in front of people. Really creates an environment for finding gray areas in your knowledge. And
I'm always surprised by how many people don't know about the spot. That's number one. Number two, I'm always surprised by how many people don't know about our chat room, aka Slack. Because that's like the centerpiece of our community. Obviously, we have a great community. There's a lot of great people around, but I do think you need to have a Slack habit, you know, and I mean a habit. I don't mean log in once, look and leave, right? You gotta download the desktop app and have it be running in the background. And here's a thing that I feel like is worth mentioning, and we might need to mention this in more places, frankly, is that, you know, I've been in tech forever, and I would say even before tech, I had a chat habit just from college, right? You had like your AOL, AIM Messenger. You guys are probably too young for this, but AOL had a messenger system back in the day, and it was just floating in the background, like all throughout college for me, right? And even after a little bit. And then when I went to work, we had a company instant messaging software, internal, and that was always floating in the background for me. And then when I started working, there's always a chat software that's floating in the background that served as team communication, and you were expected to at least monitor that, because I've been remote since like 2006, and you still need a centerpiece of communication, and it's not email, it's a chat room, right? So for launch school, it's the same thing. You need like a Slack habit of having that software in the background and just periodically monitoring it throughout the day. Not everybody does this, but I do think that if you go to work, it is expected that you do this. Even if it's like in person, it's expected that you do this. You need to monitor some sort of chat. Just throwing it out there in case somebody's listening to this and doesn't have a Slack habit. I just want to like keep emphasizing that. And the way that you develop a habit, any habit, is that you got to keep doing it, right? You can't do it once or twice and just like, no one said hi to me when I said something and that was it, right? You gotta, as you said, Daniel, like monitor it and like observe it and then contribute to it, and eventually you'll have more comfort level, right? It's that's what it takes.
You gotta make it like a part of your like study ritual, like in a sense. It's kind of like I always have Slack open in the background. Like at work, I have Teams open just to quickly be able to ping people for various things that like a call doesn't make sense. And it's like similar for me with like launch school. Like there's a handful of students that I feel like I chat with quite a lot, just kind of seeing whether it's like day-to-day stuff or like asking them about the curriculum or checking in on like how their studying's going to kind of build some camaraderie. But
yeah,
you just pop it up in the background, and it helps keep me on track. And then like there's like this whole camaraderie aspect too of like, oh, you can see some activity so you know other people are studying, and yeah, it adds like a sense of community. Otherwise, like you're just reading and practicing on your own.
For sure. Now you don't do it too much, right? It's just like anything. It's like potato chips, you know. Don't have too much of it. It's we're here to study and all that. Don't ping people, you know, 8 hours a day. So
no.
And the spot is a channel in Slack, right? That's like the centerpiece of it, or one of the centerpieces of it. We'll talk about GatherTown in a bit. But how did you sort of so you sort of monitor the spot channel, just observe, and then you initially started as a participant. In other words, you attended the sessions created by leads, and then you participated as a lead.
Yep. Yeah. So initially there was a lot of value in me hearing like leads at the time articulate concepts, because I think especially at first, like in the first couple courses, like you're trying to like gauge what is like sufficiency in your learning, and like how well am I supposed to be able to communicate this, and like you're kind of trying to see the community and launch school standard. And so the sessions really helped me, being run by leads who are through the courses, have like that standard in mind. Like they already went through the assessment, got critiqued, either did well, did the revisions, what the whole 9 yards. And so they know the standard for the course you're in. So for me, initially it was super valuable for that, just kind of seeing that perspective from people a little bit further along. And then similarly, I've like historically found a lot of value in teaching stuff. And the kind of the gold part of teaching, even in this like little tiny microcosm of whether it's like one like small topic, is just that as you're preparing to go over something, and especially as you're explaining it to people, you really quickly find areas that you can't explain sometimes, and those are the things that you still need to study. Like if I'm explaining some concept and I can't come up with an example, then like, ooh, this is like a yellow flag for like for sure need to review this more. Um, and that's like, I guess like the largest value that I've found being a lead. It's like inherently useful for you to kind of keep refreshed on the material, but also just being able to find those gray spots because they're like kind of blind spots until you're forced to articulate something like in front of other people. Then like they really get kind of consolidated into the gray spot that they are.
That's so true. That's so true. I was a longtime software engineer prior to teaching people, and a lot of times you can make things work because that's the way you've always done it. But it's not until you're forced to explain it, especially to like very perceptive people, right? It's like not people who just won't let anything go. It's like, wait a second, doesn't sound quite right. Explain that. You're like, oh, okay, actually, my mental model was off, actually, right? What's great about the spot, I think, that's in contrast to, let's say, if I was like leading a session, I feel like if I did that, I was like, oh, that's a good point, and I kept getting corrected. I think people might be like, why am I here, right? But the spot is totally different. It's like peer based, and we say that, right? And it's an opportunity for people who lead to also learn, right? And this is in contrast to our TA-led sessions and other more official sessions that we have, right? And I think it's just it decreases the severity a little bit across the board, and it allows for mistakes. And that's where you learn, right? On both sides, on the people receiving it and the people listening to it. And also, I feel like if you're listening to somebody who is not an expert, you might actually be more actively listening. Like, I want to make sure that like this is correct, right? Let me make sure that that's right. So, I every time I've sort of dropped into one of those sessions, I'm always blown away by the quality. Always blown away by the people who are leading it. I wanted to take this opportunity to also talk about the history of the spot a little bit. And JD's been around for a little bit, so maybe JD, you can maybe talk about how you found the spot and
Sure.
what led you to kind of take a more of a leadership role, and then also give us a little bit of history about it if you can.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll say, I think like Daniel, I didn't necessarily know about the spot coming into it. I actually, before I joined the spot, I think I joined the channel for the leads because I was like, oh, leads, maybe this is about like job leads. And then so I just like joined this random channel,
That's
just trying
hilarious.
to join everything.
Job leads.
So like I didn't really understand what it was at first. I definitely think that is an area like the advertising of it is something that we could do a little bit better about that. Just for new students coming in, it's kind of hard to know where to put your focus on it. But eventually I heard some people talking about the spot, probably just in like the general channel or like one of the other like random channels on Slack. I checked out the gather space, I think when I was in 100. So like when I was in the prep course before I even joined the core, just because someone was having a meetup, actually Ben Peralt, who we just had as one of our Q&A people, but he was just like, hey guys, we're going to be hanging out in this space, and I was like, oh hey, I'm just in the prep course, but do you mind if I join? And that was like really cool. So we'll talk about that for sure. But I knew about that before I even knew about the spot. But eventually I found the spot, and it was kind of the same way with Daniel. I was creeping on it for a little bit, and then eventually it was just like, oh, I should probably participate in this. I think I really started towards the end of what was the deprecated 101 course. So it's because I felt like there was this need to, I need to probably know my stuff before I attend the session, which I hear is like a lot of the time for students who don't attend the sessions is because they think, oh, I should probably have like a little bit of an idea what's going on. And I really don't think that's the case. Like, I think as early as you can get into the course, the better, just having that kind of first introduction into the material. But but so I joined when I was in 101, started attending sessions, and then just instantly found that both a great place to come and just get more time in on the material, a great way to meet new students, and kind of supplementary to the TA sessions that are already held for the 101 course. So I think it was 101 when I was brought on as a lead, and started lead, or no, it wouldn't have been 101. It would have been 120 when I was brought on as a lead. So I got brought in pretty early, and found that just like the aspect of coming in, teaching sessions, really helped to both build my confidence in the material, but then also like rethink about some of the areas that I maybe took for granted, like, oh, I'm sure I know this. And then when you try to explain it, you find your gray areas, like Daniel said. In fact, I've definitely had courses where I've just said something, or sessions where I've said something and it's just like blatantly wrong and doesn't even work in code. And I'm like, all right, well, just so you know, I'm not a TA, I'm a student, so we're gonna figure this out later. And then you have to like, you're actually, oh, okay, I don't know this. I need to like maybe it's just like, I think mine was on lexical scope, and it was just like, oh, there's this like area that like has never come up, and it's something that I don't know. So I just need to look into it further. So I think that's like one of the benefits of the spot, is just being able to come in, find your gray areas, give back to the community was a huge one, but really just like kind of model that study, practice, overlearn, teach, which are kind of really the steps for what like the spot is supposed to present. So to talk about the history of the spot.
Before we go into history, I just want to make one point about what you said about making a mistake while you're teaching. It reminds me of that saying where writers will say, I write not because I have something to say. I write to figure out what I have to say, right? And I think sometimes that's the case here too, especially when you're not charging like $20 per course. If you're charging money, then all of a sudden I want a refund, right?
Sure.
But
yeah.
But if you're afraid, it's almost like afraid to teach. It's almost like you go to figure out where you're deficient and where you need to improve. And again, take it as a peer learning opportunity that we're going to learn together. We're going to figure this out together. We're going to reach clarity together, rather than like, I have all the knowledge, and listen to me, right? So that's a change in how, like, why you do it. You don't write because you have a lot to say. You write to figure out what you want to say. Same thing here. So
yeah,
so go forward with the history. Sorry.
yeah, no worries. But yeah, definitely. I will say that probably like joining the spot as a lead is almost done for selfish reasons, because you're doing it to like help yourself as much as you are help the community. All right. So as far as like where the spot came from, it started out, I guess, pretty like humble beginnings, I guess is what we could say about it. It was just a study group between friends. So a few friends got together just for study sessions. As one would progress through the course, they were able to kind of like mentor, like model the sessions that were being led. And uh, as it was kind of being developed, they found out that more students were kind of in the same position, where they were looking for study groups to get together that were maybe a little bit more structured, where they could just come in, have somebody as maybe like a semi-authoritative figure, be able to reside over and structure the meeting or hold the meeting for them to come and attend. So the spot channel developed from that, where yeah, we started to get these structured sessions together. Leads who had passed a previous course were able to then hold sessions for that course, for the courses that they had passed all the assessments for. And then just over time, it's developed more from there. We eventually moved into like adding spot shout outs. We added this thing, Gather, which is the new virtual space that Launch School's taken over and started implementing for the whole school. But yeah, I think it just started from noticing a want for a structured study session, like similar to the TA sessions, although we are not TAs. Again, I want to reiterate that. But just kind of keep that momentum going, where you're benefited from attending a session, interacting more in the community, and really kind of giving back and interacting within the culture of Launch School.
Yeah, I just looked this up too. It looks like I did an introductory podcast with Lena, Rodney, and Christian, who are the original founders of the spot back in October 2020, so 3 years ago, over 3 years ago. And so they started, before then, and so it's been going strong ever since. And so there's a need for this, and I get this pushback sometimes, and I just want to address it here. This is not a trick to get students to teach students. Like this is not the goal, right? Like that's not what we're doing. This is to lower the consequence, right? That gives people an opportunity to speak their words and speak what they know, speak their mental model to others without anybody judging anybody, right? That's all it is. It's an opportunity to do that before you get into the assessment. I also think that if you think about what we're doing here at Launch School, and I think should be the goal of any training program, but it's not always about, like, education is so weird. It's just not about white glove service. Does that make sense? It's not about like making sure every concern is addressed for you as a student. I come here and I do that, and we do that for years and years, and you come out the other end, and then what? And then, like, what do employers want? They don't want somebody whose every issue was addressed, right? They want somebody who would stand on their own. That's what we're doing here. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. It's like, you need to stand on your own. How? Right? It's like parenting. You don't want to be too protective because then they can't survive in the world. But you don't want to be too aggressive because they'll be, not successful for the other reason, for the opposite reason, right? So it's the same thing here. We don't want to tear people down too much, but if we support white glove service too much, you're not ready for the world. You're not ready for a job. You're not going to get that 6-figure job because it's been handed to you, right? So the meta skill that we're actually trying to establish here at Launch School, the meta skill, and I think the most important skill, right, is how do you stand on your own? How do you teach others, right? How do you explain your mental model of the world? How do you explain how you understand things to other software engineers? That's the work. That's the work. And this is the opportunity to do that. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, not at all. Yeah, no, I really like that. I definitely think that when I was joining, or really, I guess like it's kind of subtle, but the whole like experience with Launch School has been a practice in stepping out of your comfort zone and like sometimes getting into areas where you have to figure it out for yourself. So that's like certainly was a motivation for teaching or leading sessions as well.
Yeah. So we mentioned GatherTown. Do we want to are we able to talk about that, or are you able to screen share a little bit since we have video here?
Yeah, for sure. This will be really interesting for the people just listening.
I'll do a play-by-play. Looks like a purple square. Well, I'll just set up for people who are listening. It's like a 2D video game, not 3D, 2D video game, right? Like Mario Brothers, or like Legend of Zelda back in the day.
Yeah, I would say like Pokemon, like old Game Boy Color.
I've never played Pokemon, so but it's like
showing my age here.
Just Super Nintendo Legend of Zelda 2D map, top-down view, and you're like a little character running around, and there's rooms set up. And what's really cool is that the Spot folks, and I want to credit Marcos here, who sort of pioneered this on his own before we sort of officially took it over. Look at that, it's awesome. Is that there's all these little rooms, and when you walk up to like a little room, there's like a little desk. You walk up to the desk, and all of a sudden it can open up a code editor and you can collaborate. And if you are here, if someone's here sitting at a desk, that means they want to collaborate. Otherwise, they wouldn't hang out here. And this is a great way to quote unquote run into people. One of the downsides of an online program is that we don't have a way of running into people, right? This is a great way of running into people who are studying for a certain assessment or a certain class. And you just go to that space. You're just like walking around, walk to the, JavaScript 101 room, and whoever's there is ready to collaborate. So, yeah, I'll let you take it away, JD.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you explained it perfectly. Yeah, this is a place that we really wanted to create this virtual space to enhance the community interaction. And so you join in, you can kind of change aspects of your character, change the way they look, change the clothing and different accessories. So I'm very, I don't know, retro techno there. But just make it fun, like change your character, and then anybody in the space is coming here accessing coder pads with the intention of studying, but if they're in the space, feel free to walk up to them, say hi. There's multiple times where I'll jump into a space, I'll see people that I either have regular study sessions with, or just people that I've had other like spot sessions or something. I've seen them through the course, and just being able to walk up and have that spontaneous interaction really does add to the sense of community. Like I said, my first introduction to the spot was technically through joining Gather when I was in 100, and it was purely a meetup. Like I just saw a post on the general Slack, and they were like, "Hey guys, we're gonna hang out in the Gather, talk, maybe split up into courses, and then go over like hold study sessions that way." And that, yeah, that type of interaction is something that I had never seen like in any other type of online schooling that I'd done before. So I think I was just really attracted to that idea of it's almost like going to a physical space and just like being in that culture of just like everyone's here to study to learn, rather than kind of being on online and you don't really see the other people behind the screen. And so we have aspects of video communication. So like kind of we're on Zoom right now, like you can walk up to people, the cameras turn on, you can hear audio, so you can actually like have a proximity effect. And I've got my video and audio turned off right now just so that it doesn't interfere with the Zoom. But let's say I'll just interact this space right now. I can walk here, and as soon as I walk into a space next to somebody else, their camera will come on, and I can just start a conversation with them, see what they're see what course they're studying for, and kind of what they're doing, and if it's something that I think could benefit me, see if I can just like either hang out in the background or maybe participate in.
Yeah. And I think, again, you're sometimes afraid to bother people. You're like, oh no. But if they're here, they're almost saying like, I'm ready to collaborate with others, right? Otherwise, there's no reason to be here. And yeah, and I think the proximity thing is really cool. They did a really good job with this, which is like, as you walk away from someone, that meeting disappears. Instead of like sending Zoom links all over the place. When you walk into a room or near someone, you pop into their meeting automatically. And the funny thing is, if you go down, JD, if you go down to near the entrance and closer towards the women's group room, we have a room for the women's group. And this is just, completely serendipitous, right? Not planned for this podcast or anything, but you see like
Hello.
Amy and Wendy there. Oh, you went all the way in. But yeah, if you see Amy and Wendy there, they're probably planning something for the women's group, right? They're moderators or admins of the women's group, and so they're having a conversation there, probably about it. It's just kind of cool to see that, right? Like if they didn't do this in GatherTown, we wouldn't see it, and it's not a big deal if we don't see it. But it's always nice to see activity and things happening, and perhaps again allow for that serendipitous collision, serendipitous like hallway collision, hallway collaboration, right? Not planned, right?
Yeah.
But just allow for serendipity, which is kind of a cool feature to have.
Yeah, and it can be planned too, but yeah, I think that like really the coolest feature is just being able to like I know Amy pretty well. If I were like just visiting launch school or Gather on my own right now, and we weren't in the process of recording this, I could just pop in, say hey, and that's like really cool to just be able to like come to this space. Definitely enhances the interaction.
Yep, for sure. And we see some people here studying at certain booths, Nate and Derek, and probably just hop on in and join them if you want. Yeah, this is really cool. And again, shout out to Marcos for initially kind of building out this. We will work on building out more features and more activities over time. I think there was at one point we didn't have some games where you can play some games together. But I was thinking having like a chess set there or something, that way someone wants to play chess.
I think Scribble.io was like one of the funnest ones, or like one of the ones that was in a few spaces. It was like Pictionary essentially. But yeah, we used to have games there. We need to add that back actually.
Oh, we need to add that back. Yeah, I think games will be that'll probably attract more usage than let's go together.
Sure.
But yeah, it's such a great and again, Spot was the initial pioneers of GatherTown. Now it's, not only for use by the Spot sessions. I think even some of our TA sessions are being held in there. We want to create rooms for certain TA sessions and maybe Spot sessions in the future as well. So a lot of exploration and investment still going on to GatherTown, and as people use it more, send us requirements, send us like use cases. Happy to explore what we should do with it, but I like it a lot, and I always try to hold events in there whenever I can. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, how do you become a lead? So we talked about the value of, leading sessions, teaching others. What's the process by which you select leads, and that experience?
For sure. So I'll also take this one, but feel free to jump in, Daniel. So our process for reaching out to leads, bringing on leads, is fairly casual. We have the criteria that in order to pass, or in order to lead a previous session, you have to have passed all the assessments for that course's session. And it's nice if you've done like well in the course, but really I think that it can kind of benefit anybody. Like if you've passed a course, the ability to go back and teach a course is so helpful for re-ingraining material and learning it to an even better extent, that I think really that it can apply to anybody. So the process of bringing on leads, we can be recommended, and we'll reach out to leads sometimes if there's someone who attends a bunch of Spot sessions, and another lead sees that they like recommend them, say that they might make a good lead, then we can reach out to them. A lot of times we get reached out to, where a lead will just say, hey, I've attended a lot of Spot sessions. I just passed 120, 130, whatever it was. And I'd like to start leading. What is the process? So if you're interested in leading a set, or if interested in starting to lead sessions, just reach out to either me or Daniel to get onboarded. We can set up a time to meet with you, just talk about the different criteria. Since we run adjacent to launch school, we certainly have like standards where you need to follow the code of conduct and things like that. But as far as becoming a lead, like it's an entirely voluntary position. So we appreciate anybody that's willing to contribute, and we think that it does it enhances both the students who are attending the sessions as well as the lead leading the sessions, for the reasons that we've taught previously. So it's just mutually beneficial, kind of a win-win. So if you're somebody who just wants more to interact more with the previous courses and actually have a reason to go back to previous courses once you've already passed them, reach out to us and we'll get you onboarded, and you can start hosting sessions immediately from that point. I think there is maybe not really a misunderstanding, but people tend to think like, oh, lead is leading a session for this course this week, so that course is covered. Lead as many courses as you want. I know when I was first joining the Spot session, or the Spot as a whole, we would have like 2 sessions for 101 a week, maybe 3, and I'd attend all of them. What I find is that the more, like, if you hold more sessions, more like people will continue to show up.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't know if Daniel has anything to add to that.
That's pretty comprehensive. Yeah, I guess similarly, like I would also reiterate the multiple sessions a week has helped me out, whether I was reviewing certain courses or preparing. And I feel like that's completely accurate. Like if you, just because there's some coverage doesn't mean that people don't want more exposure and more opportunity to help kind of articulate their concepts before an assessment. And yeah, it's kind of fun. You can meet people, and everyone gets more practice. But that was super comprehensive, JD. I think you covered it.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. And what's the future for the Spot? It's going pretty well. It's going for a long time now. Over 3 years. What do you want to see? Where do you want to see it grow as moderators? Obviously, we got GatherTown, a lot of stuff happening there. But what else is in the future?
I'll let Daniel take this one first. Yeah,
I can jump in this one a little bit. I think, let's see, a couple areas that I would like to see this Spot grow. Like, one, we have like these great sessions. I think that the social collisions that occur because of the Spot, are super valuable. So if we can expand on those in any way that we can, whether that's by like making the study sessions easier to attend or more beneficial, and kind of get the rate of use higher in those, and get like similarly getting more people in to gather. I think that's like a really useful tool that the spot can kind of help cultivate. In addition to that, I think that there's like kind of a handful of resources that the spot has kind of helped cultivate for some of the earlier courses. And I know that like there are somewhat approved, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've gotten OKs on some, like a couple of blog posts that had additional study problems that were cross-linked in the spot. A lot of those are only in Ruby. And I would like to see that kind of expanded a little bit. I feel like the JavaScript track isn't quite as covered in like a lot of ways. And like, mind you, this isn't not in the context of the curriculum, in the context of there's been more students who've gone through the Ruby track. And so there's more blog posts and a couple things that have been tied back into the spot that are still useful. And I'd like to see that expanded a little bit, potentially through some either additional blog posts or porting over of some of these questions. I think it, especially in the first couple of courses, for me at least, the more material the better. Just having kind of more things to look at, a little bit more things to kind of wrap my head around. Yeah, I think
that's probably
kind of
more the best marketing for the spot there. One is playing games together on GatherTown. Two is more exercises that's not available anywhere else. I think maybe the pitch of like you should teach others is not as strong as we have some secret exercises. And just to comment on that a little bit, so I have seen those exercises and we've okayed it. And there's like a little wiki even where people can contribute other exercises. Now, we don't want people to cross the line. This has happened before where people contributed assessment questions. You're going to be expelled for that, right? So don't do that. Don't cross the line. But if you're going to be helpful to each other in terms of like encountering exercises in the wild that you thought was useful, I think that's okay. And I don't mind it. The reason why I don't mind it is because people are different. People are very different. We get all kinds of feedback, as you can imagine. I don't know if you guys noticed this. In some of the exercises, we have further exploration. Have you noticed that? The further exploration. Yeah. So we don't really provide solutions or code reviews because they're further exploration, right? And so sometimes people will write an email, be like, hey, how come these don't have solutions? They're part of the curriculum. You have to realize how they came about, right? So we have students of all backgrounds and abilities. And no matter what we put in front of people, there's always some small subset that's like, we should push it further to this and that, right? Or here, I look what I did this and that. And so as sort of like a nod to those folks, we put further exploration. And if you say, well, you have to then provide code reviews and you have to provide solutions, you have to support all of them, then I'm like, I'm gonna take it away. But if I take it away, the cycle just repeats in that more advanced students will just kind of make these suggestions again, right, for these exercises. So I kind of feel like the spot having these exercises is a similar thing where we have our core curriculum, right, our exercise assignments and all that's been good for most people. But there's always people who want more. And I think having that as an optional more is not a bad thing. And it's okay. And that way, like our staff is not on the hook to like code review it and we don't have to double and triple check every exercise. It's more, again, it decreases the severity across the board, right? It allows for mistakes. Whereas again, in the core, like you don't want a launch goal exercise to have any mistake or any, you want it to be pushing the right buttons and to be emphasizing the correct things versus some other exercises just like, it might be useful. So-and-so found it useful, but others didn't. That's okay. You might still want to check it out. And I think that's totally okay to have that. And I'm okay with Spot having it. And I think migrating it over to JavaScript, I think is awesome.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of like having that separation, having it be a part of Slack. It never occurred to me that it should have the answers provided. It was always just seen as an additional resource, but kind of invaluable for me, like getting ready for the 109 interview or the deprecated, which is now 119 interview. There's like 60 problems that are taken straight from Code Wars, and those were so helpful when I felt like it would just be nice to have additional problems to iterate over, just find my weak spots.
We don't know where they came from because a lot of things have copyright, so we don't.
Oh, sorry.
So this is another reason why we're like, hey, students contribute it. It's not part of Launch School. It's not. We have to respect copyright. So we don't know where they came from.
We can edit that out in post.
But yeah, no, I get your point though, in terms of like, these are the great exercises that help me. It may or may not help you, right? And it's like FYI. Versus if Launch School says it, it's like, you should do this, right? Like, you should do the exercise we put in front of you, the assignment. You shouldn't skip it.
Yeah, it's seen as more of an option rather than a requirement.
Yeah, I love that. I love that for the spot. Just don't turn it into a and I know you're not going to, but just I remember in college, all the fraternities had like old tests, old exams. That was like a perk. And I'm like, that's not what we're doing here, right? We're not doing that here.
I feel like that's the opposite of like master-based learning, right? Like, you're here if you want to learn it, and so cheating through the assessments is like you're just wasting your subscription fees.
Wasting all our
Yeah.
time. You're wasting everybody's time. You're wasting everybody's time. You're wasting your own, but you're also wasting mine. So that's exactly right. Okay, cool. I mean, anything else people should be aware of about the spot? What would you like them to do? Check it out, join Slack.
Definitely check it out. Join Slack. So the Slack is just the-spot. So join that channel. Every Thursday we have posts for all of the courses that we hold sessions for.
And how you join Slack is this, by the way. So if you're listening, first of all, you have to register at launchschool.com for free. You don't have to pay. And then there's a little chat room link on the sidebar. So click on that, and there's instructions. It's convoluted. We did over engineer it. That's okay. We're programmers. Follow instructions there, and then follow it precisely, and then you'll get access to the Slack. Once you're in Slack, download the desktop app is my recommendation. So you build a Slack habit, and then you go into a channel called the-spot. Is that right? The-spot. Yeah.
Yep. Hashtag the-spot, but all channels start with a hashtag.
And in that channel are instructions for getting into GatherTown.
Yes. Yeah. So we have that on a regular weekly post. You'll have both the link to it and the password to get in. So yeah, definitely.
Now that I speak it out, it's a little hard to get to. Now that I've said all that, I'm like, yeah, if you're kind of brand new and you're just like, how do I get into this awesome community, right? You got to, it's like a speakeasy, you got to go to the back of the bar and back through the dark alleyway and say the secret word. And then,
yeah.
then you're in.
If you're really having trouble, just DM me. I'll let you know how to get in.
DM is direct message.
Direct message.
And you have to be on Slack to direct message.
And you have to be on Slack. So best of luck.
Best of luck. Log in to Launch School, totally free. Launchschool.com. Chat room on the sidebar. Follow instructions. Get into Slack, and that's where everybody is. So, all right. Well, thanks so much today, JD and Daniel. I think we probably need to just like get this on our calendar to do it every couple of 2 years, because even though I feel like we've done a lot of advertising and mentions of the spot, it pains me to hear both of you were like never heard of it until several months into this thing. So I want to figure out a way to like get this out there even more than what I thought was what we're doing.
Yeah, there's definitely some places that I'd like to see it progress in the future. But one of those areas is promoting it more frequently, getting it on channels where it's going to be seen by new students.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Have a good day. Thanks for stopping by.
All right. Thanks so much.
Cheers, guys.